In this video, I'm going to be talking about my journey with organized religion. I've brought up this topic in my life a lot within the last few videos, and I thought it would be it would make more sense to talk about my experience with religion, considering I'm now making more spiritual content, just kind of showing my journey with that and kind of desensitizing and breaking those barriers that I have with religion. So I decided I'll talk about my journey. Anyways, let's get right into my story. So me and my family didn't really grow up in church necessarily, but I did grow up having some of the Bible stories because I grew up Christian. So I grew up having the basic Bible stories being taught to me by my parents, as well as like Veggie Tales was always on, Kirk Franklin, gospel music, things like that. That was always within my life, but that felt more of like a culture thing than a religious aspect in my life. And it almost had the same weight as like not Christianity, but like Santa Claus or the Easter bread bunny. Whoa, no, the Easter bunny. It was still in that same realm that if you're a good girl, if you're a good kid, you'll be rewarded by like toys from Santa, the money from the Tooth Fairy, candy from the Easter bunny. So it was never like a core concept or a core belief in my life personally until I was much older in life. When I was much older, I had started to have questions about my life, my purpose, what I'm meant to be, who I'm meant to be, why was I born, all of these strong questions. And I thought Christianity was the answer because as a kid, that's what I was always told. Also, when I became much older, I was dealing with a lot of heavy things like with low self-esteem and SH due to SA experience that I had when I was younger. So I definitely had a lot on my heart during this time. And because of everything that I was taught when I was younger, I believed that being a good Christian girl would help relieve some of that stress and anger and pressure that I was dealing with due to my situation. And I wanted to dive deep into it. So I remember asking my parents if we could find a church home all the time, and we would go sometimes to different churches, but nothing ever really felt like there was anything solid for me. There was nothing that really spoke to me when we would go from church to church to church. And for the most part, my relationship with the actual church building was on a fickle basis. So if it's Christmas, we might go to church. If it's Easter, we were definitely going to church, but it wasn't something that we did every Sunday. One day our family did eventually find a church home, and that's when I dove straight into services. I remember doing praise dancing and worshiping and getting into groups and trying to make friends and just trying to again get those questions answered. I remember praying every night, reading my Bible, writing notes in church, going to like the Sunday school for the older kids, and all of that, just believing that if I threw my life into praise and worship and service, that eventually everything that I was going through would kind of subside. It did not subside at all in the slightest bit, unfortunately. Due to a lot of different situations within the church that we found, a lot of church politics and a lot of hypocrisy that we found, which is not uncommon for a lot of people's journeys, especially within Christianity, I've started to feel very disconnected from the people and the things that used to bring me joy. And I eventually stopped going to that specific church and then just stopped doing all the things that I used to do altogether. I eventually stopped going to church altogether, of course, and that meant I didn't have like a clear belief system. I still considered myself Christian, but I thought that I wasn't a good Christian because I wasn't going to church every Sunday. But because of everything that was going on at the only church that I felt like I belonged in, I was like, I was lost again. And all of those old things I was trying to conceal started coming back up again. So after I stopped going to church, I again, of course, felt disconnected and spiritually like blocked. And a lot of the same stuff was coming up in my life, and I was lost. I remember always feeling lost, and this around this time was when I was about to graduate high school and walk into adulthood. And of course I had way more questions, and I was feeling like I just don't know where to turn. I don't know what's ahead for me, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to tackle everything that is going to be out there for me. So I was definitely scared, and I was especially vulnerable. I put emphasis I emphasize the fact that I was vulnerable and lost and felt spiritually blocked and disconnected and honestly sad. I emphasize this because of where the story takes its turn. So I met a guy, I met a man, actually. let's say what it was. I met a man. That man was a Latter-day Saint, better known as a Mormon. Yes, I met a man who had followed the Mormon church. And before I go any further, I just want to say this is not an expose. This is not a think piece. This is not me necessarily commenting specifically about the Mormon church. I know that they have their issues, their problems, they're problematic. And I also know it's very popular to talk about them on platforms like social media or on TV because they are very polarizing. But that is not the point of this video, so that's not something that we're going to get into. I will say, before I met this man, I did not know what a Mormon was at all. And sometimes I wish that I would have known what a Mormon was and what people thought of them, like outside of the church. I wish I would have known that, but also I'm glad that I didn't know because I was able to join the church. Yes, I did join the church at some point. I was able to join the church without any preconceived notion. So yes, when I met this man, I eventually became a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. To make a very long story short, I'm going to say that I became a member to satisfy someone else. And it wasn't a great experience to do so because you can't jump into something, especially with spirituality, for or because someone else wants you to do so. And I didn't go in with the best intentions, and I didn't get the best intentions out of it either. I thought I was in a love story. I literally did. At 16, I thought that it was going to be me and him against the world. But really, all it was I was so scared and afraid of life that I gave all of my agency to someone else. Someone who was just as lost, just as scared, and just as broken as I was. After very long conversations, a lot of situations, I realized that the price that I needed to pay to be a perfect Mormon girl, especially for another man, was way too high for me. And I eventually, it took even longer, unfortunately, to break it off and just leave completely. But eventually I realized, like, this isn't for me. It's not that it's wrong. It's just like, that is not for me. Also, just to touch, I know I said I wasn't going to go into the Mormon religion. I'm just going to say, just to touch on it, this was another reason why I felt like I needed to go, was because just due to who I was and where I was from, it would be an uphill battle for me to continue to be there. I would have constantly had to prove myself and my worth to people. And that is just the truth. Just due to like who I was and where I was from. And I know that is a criticism that the church gets a lot, and it's definitely valid. It's very specific. I'm trying to be vague about it, but if you read in between the lines, like, you'll get it. And if you don't, then don't even worry about it. Yeah. The Mormon Church, or LDS, is not just a church, which was a culture shock for me. It's not just a church. It's a lifestyle, and it's an organization. And I'm not trying to say that the lifestyle or the organization is good or bad. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't for me. And when you're constantly trying to pretend to be someone or something that you're not, it can get tiring. And it definitely got tiring for me. In the end, the person I had been trained to love had put their boundaries down. They let me know that they would not be able to continue being with me if I was not a part of the church. And I had to stand on business and be like, okay, I can't be in the church. And that must mean I can't be with you. And it was sad. We did try to be cordial. There's just too much done, too much said. And he did eventually come back to let me know, like, his life is so much better without me and all this other stuff. And honestly, I'm happy for him, because he was able to find his perfect Mormon girl and live in the fantasy land that he wanted to create, because that's what he was willing to do for himself. I just wasn't willing to do that. And I wasn't willing to play in his facade. And that's where it ended there. Even though I did end up leaving him and leaving the church, essentially, again, there were still things that were said and things that were done. I was left heartbroken. There were a lot of strains in my family due to the decision I made to join the church. I did lose a lot of relationships because of that. And since then, I haven't really claimed a specific church. I did try to go back to the Mormon church again, because I thought maybe if I'm going without my ex's involvement, I would find, something. And I just realized it's just not for me. This isn't for me. And so here we are. I don't claim a specific religion. I don't know what the future holds for me. I still have the same questions that I had when I was younger. Who am I? What am I? What is my purpose? I don't fully know yet, but I no longer believe that the answers to those questions reside in a specific deity or a specific religion. And I believe that those answers lie within myself, that based on journaling, shadow work, meditating, learning who I am, I'll eventually learn how to do things like love myself and be there for myself, be my cheerleader, find peace within my heart, within my soul. And the power is completely on me. It's not on a god. It's not in a religion, but I myself have that power, and I'm learning to embrace that knowledge. That was the video. That is basically my journey. It's not a long one. I just wanted to share because it is kind of interesting. If you want to more information or had any questions, leave them down in the comments. I'm at a better place now where I'm able to speak about my journey with religion. If there are any questions, or if you want me to talk more about it in a video, because when I say I'm Mormon, well, I'm not, but when I used to say I was Mormon, people would be like, whoa. And I think people don't really expect that when they see me. So if that is something that you wanted me to talk more about, like, I totally would. But right now I'm in a good place in my life where those old triggers really don't hurt or bother me anymore, and I feel comfortable speaking on what has transpired in my past, because I feel like speaking on it, not only will it be more cathartic for me and help me grow, but it might help someone else who's dealing with the same stuff that I am. So let me know. Anyways, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.